Hello, everybody. Roger Durling, Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, and I am so excited to be able to talk to Director Alexander Nanau and his new film, Collective. Before we start talking, I want to point out that Collective is Romania's official entry for the Academy Awards, and it has been shortlisted not just for the Best International Feature Film, but it was also shortlisted for the Best Documentary Feature Film, which is quite an achievement. It has also been nominated for the Independent Spirit Award and already has garnered the following awards, and I'm just gonna rattle a few. It won the Best Documentary at the European Film Awards. It won the Boston Society of Film Critic Award, Best Documentary, National Society of Film Critics winner, Best Foreign Language Film, and the San Francisco Bay Area Film Critics Circle Awards, Best Documentary, amongst many other accolades. Hope you're not getting tired of all this accolades, Alexander. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I want to start first with I've seen your film a couple of times, and it's such an impressive achievement in so many ways. But I'm so taken with your approach, the way you directed the film. You don't do interviews, you don't do voiceovers in the film. Can you tell us about approaching the subject in that way?
Yeah, so basically what I do is direct cinema. So I really embed basically in the life of characters I decide to follow, and do that for over a period of more months. Uh, and basically just record what their life is and what happens in front of the camera. And the intention is to let the film speak for itself and let it really work like the best films of direct cinema, basically, where we watch a story unfold in front of us without having any comment or any explanation. The story has to be self-explanatory, basically.
Yeah, but I mean, Alexander, we have been so programmed when we watch a documentary, or even when we watch your film is a thriller, and when we watch, let's use the example of like Born Identity. There is a little ID that tells us where we are or who we're talking to. You do away with all of that, and you trust your audience to keep up, and we actually, can you tell us about that? You're not concerned about us, losing track of where we are, which we don't,
I mean, it's a process for sure. Even for me, also in the editing room, it starts also out with having landmarks, basically, to understand where the story, how the story moves along. But in the editing process, I try to, while I dig basically for the core of the story, I really try to bring it into a place where the audience really enjoys putting information together and enjoys understanding itself, uh, the story and the different dots it has to connect, uh,
mm-hmm.
of the story. And I think that's very important for the cinematic experience. The fact that we have to participate, the fact that we have to identify with the characters on the canvas, to a point where we really um, want to understand ourselves, what is going on with them and inside of them, without having a filmmaker in between, or without having a storyteller in between. I think that,
There's
yeah.
Yeah, no, there's also a very rich thing that happens in which we're learning who this person is, the way that it happens in the real world, where we're in the room, and who is this person, and we start to figure out, and you make us It's really interesting to me because you actually make us connect more in that way, where.
Yeah, so it's basically the process that I went through as a filmmaker, because when I shot the story and got interested in these characters, it was the same process for me. I had to put the puzzle pieces together myself. For example, in the beginning, I did not know what the journalists were really investigating. Well, they agreed finally to let me shadow their work, but they would not tell me what they are investigating. So,
Mhm.
for sure, in order to be sure that nothing leaks in a way, and I had to put the pieces together myself. And I found it very important for me to be able to transfer this process on to the viewer, so that the viewer really puts the puzzle pieces together himself or herself, and in that way really gets interested basically in details that one might not be interested in, like dilution, infections, how does press work. These are all things that you have to, get the viewer to a point where he himself gets gradually more and more interested in them, without me, without me, let's say, um, guiding or teaching or telling him what is important about it or what not. It's something that the viewer has to decide himself with his own value um, measure system, let's say.
Mhm. You also do something that I don't recall seeing in a documentary, and is the speed in which it moves. The editing rhythm. It There's a fast pace to it. I mean, it's very taut. Can you tell us about, is that something that, as you were uncovering this, um, that mimics the speed of your discovery, or it was something that you developed while you were editing the film?
No, it is basically I tried to uh, establish the rhythm of the film um, in the way that it resembles the rhythm of the life we were experiencing while shooting the film, because it was exactly like that. Like every day something new would come out, and the journalists would go deeper and deeper, and what they would find would be more appalling every day, and suddenly implying secret services, highest ranks of politics, uh, somebody commits suicide. Like that's how it was, and we just tried. And I understood in the editing that basically it is like a jazz rhythm. The whole thing had to be like, the whole thing felt like a jazz rhythm, and that's also what I tried then to make palpable basically for the viewer.
Hmm. Um, so you mentioned that you started, you saw the journalist, and we actually, we see a scene where they're around, in this, on the sidelines, and the focus is not on them. When did you understand that, Catalan, and the Sports Gazette had to be your entryway to the story?
For sure, we started basically out with the victims and the parents of these kids that were basically killed by the health officials and the politicians. But because the major part of the press failed at the time, and this was the only team that really started to investigate the healthcare system and this mass manipulation that they basically did during that time about the healthcare system. Um, it became clear to us that if we want to understand the relationship between power or abusive power, populist politicians, and the citizens that started to become to revolt basically against them, uh, then it would be great if we do it also observationally, to do it through the eyes of investigative journalists that investigate this power and try to give the people the information they have the right to.
But you never, I mean, you have incredible instincts, but you you couldn't have never imagined that it was them that were going to uncover all this
Never,
insane.
never. No, no, really never. I mean, the scale that it basically got at, we could we couldn't imagine it, and it's fascinating basically that life writes stories in a way that if you would imagine to take a story like that and invent it, it would be just too much. I mean, you would think a fiction film that is not based on that reality would always seem like totally exaggerated. Like, come on, really?
Correct. Correct. One of my favorite movies is The Third Man and Harry Lime, and your film started unfolding, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is like The Third Man." It's
Yeah,
insane.
isn't it? Isn't it? It's yeah, like Harry Lime is selling dilute
Yeah, yeah,
penicillin
yeah.
in post-war Vienna. And yes, I also think it's very similar, and it says a lot about the state of our societies, basically, because you could do that in post-war Vienna. You could do it with a society that is coming out of of the shock of a war, and it's comparable. I mean, there's a long discussion that one could have about, the society in which you can do things like that and what is the state of the society. But even seeing The Third Man and having in mind, the discussion that they have in this carousel, how you call it,
Yeah,
where,
carousel, of course. Yeah.
carousel, where he says like, can you see the dots down there? Like, why do you care? If I would give you money for every single dot down there, that would disappear,
Hmm.
referring to the people down there.
Yeah,
What
there
would
is. Yeah, there is a moment that I think her name is Mirella Neg in your film,
yeah,
the editor of the Sports Gazette, that says it's so mind-boggling. I'm afraid we will look crazy if we publish this. It's
totally. And that was the feeling in the newsroom. Like they were, um, how could we confront people with that reality without people saying that we are nuts?
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
How actually, well, before we get to that question, Sports Gazette, it is mind-boggling that that such an incredible investigative report is happening from the Sports Gazette. Were they known for investigating
Yeah.
journalism?
Yes, they were. So basically, they were doing that since 25 years, and it has more facets to it because, so first of all, yes, they did, and they had really good skills, and they became known as dogged journalists because they took down sports ministers that had to go to jail because of the investigations or big football bosses in Romania. Um, and there's another facet to it because I think that after the collective fire, the sources and the whistleblowers basically went to them because they trusted sports journalists more because sports journalists in a way are trained to be non-partisan. They sit in
No.
between teams, and have another resistance, let's say, to take the hate basically for staying non-partisan. That's on the one hand. And the other thing that is very important, I think, is that I think it's a very smart move to have an investigative team within a sports daily, because politicians might not get really scared if you publish investigations about their corruption in, let's say, platforms like investigative platforms that are read by 5% of, or even less of, intellectuals. But if they imagine all these people buying the most sold paper every day and opening it, people that read sports and opening it and seeing their face and the corruption list that they do, that's where they get scared. And that's
Mhm.
why I think it's so smart basically to do it in a sports paper.
How did you get Catalan to trust you? I mean, you could have been, a spy. You could have been trying to entrap him, and then he totally trusts you and allows you so much access.
Yeah, it's funny that you're saying that because basically that's what he also thought. So, although I mean, they knew my name in Romania because also my former film was known in Romania, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, uh, their first discussion once we left the first meeting with them, they told me afterwards was, okay, so the Secret Service got really wicked. Now they're sending in directors to try to penetrate our newsroom. Um, but then I think the fact that he saw that our own development team of the project of the film, which was also investigating, and we also had some sources from inside the system. I think when he saw how professional our own team is, I think that gave them the feeling that we are really serious about it. And the thing that he told me later, basically much later, after we premiered in Venice, he said the underlying thought was we lost contact with the young generation that's not reading anymore newspapers and is not seeing anymore the value and need of journalism, of,
Hmm.
of basically of information of quality. And he said we had a thought that maybe, you know, a documentary about how we work might, in a way, help us communicate again with the younger generation and could make them understand why we do what we do.
Hmm. And we're we're inside all these rooms. We watch everything that is happening. How did you create such a sense of intimacy? They seem to forget that the camera is there. They seem so relaxed and comfortable with you in there.
I think it's part of a director's job. It doesn't matter if documentary or if fiction or if theater. Um, it's about the way you build up relationships, and I think also, it's I always find it very similar to working also with actors. It's the way we trust each other and the way we communicate with each other. So, and my job is in a way to make these real people basically feel that I'm not judging them, and make them feel comfortable so that they can be themselves. It's a bit like, it's a bit like in a partnership, in a love relationship in life. The best partner in your life is the one that makes you feel so safe that you can be yourself. You don't have to act out. You don't have to be what he or she expects, right? So
Hmm.
I think that's also my job, because I want to capture authenticity, and it's the way you build up relationships with people that make them be themselves. For sure. That said, I don't pretend that my presence doesn't um, change maybe how reality would have been without me in the room or so forth. But I think that nevertheless, by this relationship, the glimpses of authenticity of the people that you film are more, and then it becomes my job to be like a street photographer, basically to capture these glimpses of authenticity.
Well, you make it sound very easy, and it is not, and it's remarkable what you accomplish and the results. I want to lead to follow with Vlad Voculescu, and that for those listening to this is the health minister, the young health minister.
Right.
He also entrusted you and gives you so much access. How did that tell us about how you gained that access.
Yeah, so basically when the press investigation that we were following, brought down the Minister of Health that was trying to cover this company that was diluting the disinfectants, I heard that they're interviewing a young patients activist for the job. It became clear that in a way they want to name somebody who could absorb this fury and anger of the people towards the healthcare system. And I remember I just thought like, okay, so if we could manage to get inside the healthcare system and film the whole story from inside this cave of corruption, that would be just grand. So I tried to get in contact with him and managed after a week or 10 days. And we met, and I met a very young man. He was 33 years old. As I
Yeah.
said, a patients activist. Like me, he basically lived outside Romania for a long time.
In
Uh,
Vienna, right? He
in
lived in
Vienna.
in
He
Vienna,
lived in Austria, exactly. I lived for a very long time in Germany.
in
So
Germany. Okay.
that connected us somehow. Uh, and he said, listen, and he gathered a very young team around him from around the world, friends of his that were also expats working in different healthcare systems and being good professionals basically. And he brought them together for his short mandate of 6 months. And I think they all supported this idea for letting me inside the system. And he said, our main goal is to bring back transparency because um, we think that health is a basic right. It's written in the Constitution. Everybody has the right to health.
Hmm.
Uh, and that means for us also that everybody has the right to know what decisions are taken inside the Ministry of Health and upon which criteria. And so then we made basically let's say a deal which was risky for him, I would say, because I said, okay, it's fantastic, but you should never tell me to stop the camera. If we want this to work and you trust me, then you have to trust me fully. And that meant not to inspire others that there's a way to make me stop filming. For sure, I would ask people when they come in if they want to be filmed, but if they don't protest or are against it, then we would just keep filming. And he had no right basically to see any cuts, so it was all in my hands.
And he never said that there was some aspect that you couldn't film. You had complete freedom.
Complete freedom for sure. There were situations where the other politicians or
Correct.
people that wouldn't like to be filmed, uh, or I don't know, his meetings with the Secret Service that every minister has. Sure, I couldn't film this kind of things, but as you see in the film, I could gain access even to things that meant to be off the record for many people, that are and were harmful for citizens.
Hmm. Part of your team, I read that included one of the survivors of the tragedy, Mihai Grisea.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell us? I mean, all throughout all of this, following Catalin and also following Vlad's story, we never lose track of the families and the survivors. Can you tell us about that, the importance of keeping that part of the story as well?
Yeah, I think they are basically the core and heart of the story because um, everything that happened and everything that any viewer can imagine that can happen to him anytime in the world he's living in, maybe a pandemic hits his life, uh, is basically in the story of the victims and the parents of those who were killed by the incompetence and corruption of the healthcare officials.
Hmm.
Uh, and Mihai, who became part of our team, basically I knew him from before. He was and is also a documentary filmmaker. We met briefly 2 or 3 years ago, before we made this film. Uh, and I heard that he was in the club because he was friends with the band that was basically on stage releasing their first album with Universal. Uh, and because they were friends, they asked him if he could film the concert. So basically, he organized 5 people to film the concert, 5 cameramen, and not all of them survived. And Mihai was also in coma for over a month. And I basically heard that he will die, that there's no chance. But after I started the project, I just felt the need one day to, I don't know why, to just walk into the office of a friend I hadn't seen since, I think, 2 years that we hadn't spoken. And I just felt the need to enter the office. It was Dan Perzhovski. He's a quite well-known Romanian artist who has a lot of exhibitions also at the MoMA and so forth. And then Mihai was sitting there telling him his story. And so I just sat down, listened for an hour, and then said, like, listen, Mihai, I just started a film about your story, basically. So don't you want to join the band? And then he, although he had to go to therapy also to treat his burn injuries and everything, he also learned to do sound and became my sound person also, besides being a very important part of the creative team.
You also, we follow, Teddy Ursula. I'm sorry, I'm Ursula now. Tell us about including her, and it's such a point inside of the story. If you could tell us about that.
Yeah, I think that the story, it's the point where cinema meets reality. I find it always to be that cinema always talks about identity. And for me, cinema always was something that I need, the need to identify with other people in order to understand your own life or your own identity when you go through this process of identification, through the time of a film with other people. And for me, all characters in a way deal with the question of who am I, and how do I want to be, who do I want to be, and that goes from journalists that do their profession in a certain way and have to decide, if they stand up to their values and how they do their profession, but also it goes also for the victims, because for me, Teddy is maybe the most I don't know, the most challenging character for me as a human being, because she says basically, these people did this to me. Evil people killed my friends and mutilated me, but I'm not gonna let that poison my life. I know who I am, and I can show you my outside, but I know who I am. I know who I am inside, and I will not look for revenge, and I will not basically. What she's saying something like, um, the only thing to do is to get up, stand up, and walk on. And I think this is something that I, as a human being, have to challenge with, because the first reaction and reflex we have when evil people do evil things to us, is to, to fight back and to take revenge in a way. And I think that's so strong of her to be herself, to stay herself in that situation.
You do something that is, I just find so amazing, is that you were able to capture blood coming to her exhibit and seeing her photographs, and then later you were able to see her photograph inside his office, and your camera pans into her photograph. That is such a unexpected, touching detail that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm not. I don't think that he was at his exhibition, but for sure he basically knew about the exhibition and was given one of the images of the exhibition by the photographer, and he really put it into his office because it was for him also a symbol for why he was there. He understood that he is there in that position because of what happened to these people, and that his mission is to be at the side and on the side of these people. And we see him also meeting these people and so forth. And when he meets these people, there's a small moment where he says to Teddy, oh, we've never met. And then they hug. There's a backstory to it that I didn't want to include because I wanted the viewers to judge Vlad by what he's doing in his office than by what he has done before. Basically, Vlad, as a patients activist, once the fire happened, also helped the victims and fought for them to be transferred to burn clinics and fought for two of them to be transferred to Vienna. Other people fought for the other ones to other countries. And basically he managed in the end to transfer two people, and that was Teddy and the dead boy Alex. The father is
Wow.
talking about, and we see basically the grave.
Mm-hmm.
Alex was in a good shape. He was supposed to survive. Teddy was in a really bad shape. She was supposed to die. They were in the same room basically in Vienna. But what happened is that Romanian hospitals and doctors and the health officials basically were so nice to not send the data about their infections to the clinics they were sent to. So the doctors there didn't know why they're on the toughest antibiotics and took them off, trying to find the right cocktail, and that killed them.
You also show us a few whistleblowers, including Camelia Rui.
Roy,
Why
yeah.
why is it that the whistleblowers are women, and is that a coincidence?
No, it's not a coincidence. Um, Women are, as in many societies, also in the Romanian societies, in the Romanian society, women are stronger, smarter, and care more, and are more reliable. That's a fact. And it's no coincidence that most women in this film, all that we see at least, are women. And Camelia Royu was basically source number zero. She's really also the one we see in the beginning of the film, where it was still very hard to film her front. Uh, she is basically source number zero for the journalist. So it was her courage and her decision to blow the whistle that basically started everything that became this massive investigation and elimination basically of this company um, that diluted the disinfectant. So she is the reason many people survived in the end and many people got rescued, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And Alexander, so you're following Catalin. What was there threat while all this uncovering was happening, and was that what? And you were right there, following them everywhere. Were you guys in danger while you were doing all this uncovering?
It's hard to say. I don't think that, I mean, Romania is part of the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, that said, also Slovakia is part of the European Union, and journalists get killed. But I did not feel, I don't know, I don't think that I felt physically threatened, although I knew that my phone was listened to by the Secret Service. I had my own source inside the Secret Service that would even, read me the numbers and whom I called and from where I was called, just to prove to me that I was followed. But I didn't see that as a threat. I just saw it as something, because I was on a daily basis next to the most, let's say, to the journalists that dug most into the system. I simply just wanted to gather information. But what we did, we organized. I mean, we are a professional production, and that said, so every evening we would copy our footage on several sources, hide them in several places, so that we would be safe in case they would break into our studio and try to harm the production. And we also flew the footage out of the country. Uh, so we took all measures not to become vulnerable and not to lose basically the project, because we became more and more aware that we are, what we are filming is really, there's a story that has to be told.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a very traumatic uh, uh, subject matter and heartbreaking, and you you were very close through this whole process. You spent a lot of time with the families as well, and there's so much grief happening. Was that affecting you in a way, or were you able to distance yourself from the subject matter?
No, um, you know, in observational filmmaking, you spend a lot of time with the people, and you identify, and you have to identify, because that's why you're interested in their stories, because you want to understand how people survive something like that. And I'm a father myself, and I must say that I don't think that I ever had to go through something more painful than uh, just trying to put myself in the position of a parent that could have saved his child, and in his most vulnerable moment, a politician or a health official like a hospital manager and doctors lied to them that their kid gets the best treatment, while they knew they put his life in danger and killed him in the end. Um, so that said, I don't think that any of us can imagine what it means for a parent to lose a child, although you could have rescued your child, but somebody tricked you into letting your own child die.
Mm-hmm.
They really fought hard to get them all transferred to proper burn clinics, and they did not let them transfer the kids to burn clinics, as he also says in the beginning of the film, right? He had already the permission from the Vienna clinic to transfer his son, and the Romanian hospital in Bucharest, the manager just did not sign the papers. He would not sign the papers just to not let him out. And they would tell him one day, "Oh, your son is in a good, he's one of the in the best health. He's fine." And once he said, "Okay, but we want to transfer him," they would say like, "No, if you move him 10 centimeters, he will die. You can't move him."
Mm.
So they really played and killed the children of these people.
And I mean, and you document this lack of humanity. A line is, she says, "We doctors are no longer human. It's all about the money." How did this lack of humanity came to be?
I I think it's the erosion of humanity in many years of doctors accepting bribes. It's a system that comes out of the communist system, that is a system of bribery in hospitals. And I think that my own opinion, my father is also a doctor, is that any doctor that takes bribes is not a doctor.
Mhm.
These two things cannot go together. If you take bribes, you're not a doctor. Uh, and but the lack of humanity, I think we can witness this all around the world right now, even with this pandemic. I mean, look at the last American administration, what they have done with the pandemic. They didn't care. They just didn't care how many people will die, and just
Yeah.
said, "Go away." You know, people will die, but it will go away.
Hmm.
Um, it's the
Which
same. It's the same lack of humanity.
Yeah, which leads me, nice segue to the next question I had, was that, this is happening in 2016, and it's very specific about Romania and the populist movement and the oppression, the attack of the free press. And then we have Brexit happening in the rest of the world, and then you mentioned Trump. We have the election of Trump as well. This what you're documenting, what is so amazing to me when I watch it, is that it's a microcosm, but it was a broader story that was happening across the world. Were you aware when you were making the film of that specificity that was becoming universal?
Yes, I became aware with the night of Brexit, because we were filming this, as you say, story about populist politicians that are incompetent, corrupt, and dismantle basically democracy and lie and attack the press and everything. Uh, and I remember very well when we went to bed in the evening when Brexit was, they were counting the Brexit vote. And we were sure this can never happen. It seemed like this can't happen, And the morning when we woke up and understood that it happened, we were petrified basically, because that was a moment where I understood the world is going to change a lot. And it was really the year where our world started to change a lot. We're just recovering a bit from the first wave, let's say, that just came over us the last 4 years.
Wow. Wow. So you filmed for 14 months and then you you did
More,
you did about 18 months of editing. Can you tell us about how the editing process was? That a pretty I mean, 18 months, that's a lengthy period. Was that a very difficult period to find the balance in the story?
Yeah, I mean, in observation documentary, basically you have the process is just a bit the other way around as in fiction films, because basically you use the editing room as the writing room. So, in fiction you write scripts for from 1 year to sometimes 10 years. And in observation documentary, basically you watch your footage and try to understand the story that you have filmed and how you can compress it into 1.5 hours. Uh, but we also had to watch. What we did is we really pulled from different TV stations all their footage about the same cases, because we wanted to watch everything and understand how other people, how journalists covered everything. So in order to have an objective point of view, in order not to be just uh, in a way maybe trapped in our singular own point of view, because we were so close to everything. And so, you watch the footage, you know where your strong things are and start to edit them. And it takes time until there were also times when we thought, oh, this could be a series. Maybe we'll try, because also HBO is one of the co-producers, but maybe we could try to make a series. But then basically we understood once we edited it down that the strongest thing is to have one film. And more than that, for sure, changing the main character in the middle of the film also needed a bit of time to understand how you do that and how how the viewer will stay with you when you really change your main character during basically in the middle of the film.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned HBO, because I was remiss at the top to thank Magnolia Pictures and Participant Media for letting us chat today. So thanks to them. One of my last questions is about the ending. It's such a poignant, powerful scene of us going with the families to the cemetery. How did you arrive as that as your ending?
I don't know. It just felt the right. It just felt the right ending. It just felt that there's nothing more to say from there on, and I felt that the fact that these parents put on this song, which was the favorite song of their son, I didn't expect that. It happened while we were filming, and I found the simplicity of this song to be just the only thing that one can say about ourselves and about life. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think that for me, it also, shows again that also these people know who they are, and through the song of their son, they listen basically in the car to the playlist of their son. They have their playlist in the car all the time. And through this song that was basically his favorite song, for me, it also shows that they, as Teddy does, they know who they are. Evil people did evil things to them. They killed their son, but
Mm.
still they know that they won't let themselves poisoned by it, and they know that, you know, we can all live in a better world if we just take care of the way we treat each other.
Yeah, and you mentioning about the song, the simple song, and it just reminded me that the song, the "Goodbye to Gravity," the band that we see at Collective, that horrible night, the lyrics that they're singing is so prescient. They're talking about corruption and that it's been there for years. I mean,
Since our inception, but yeah, we couldn't see, because basically they are and they were a band that was representative for the generation that really is fed up with their parents' generation and the world their parents built, a world of incompetence and corruption.
And what has been the reaction? I mean, obviously, you're the country's official entry for the Academy Award. What has been the reaction in the country from the average, people that have seen the film?
Uh, we had a very young audience. I mean, we only had 2 weeks in cinemas because of the pandemic. They
Hmm.
closed down, and we had uh, really good numbers basically, because the bar for a documentary that runs for many weeks in cinemas in Romania was somewhere between 3 and 5,000 viewers, because we don't have so many cinemas. It's a small country, and we had in 2 weeks 25,000 entries, and the audience was really young. And then the film went on to HBO, and there it became the most watched film of the year. From April on until the end of the year, it was really the most watched over the whole year, before Avenger films and Hollywood blockbusters. And that showed basically that there was the need to see the story. It's hard to say what it did. I think that the only thing that we can really measure is what the journalists have told us. The number of their whistleblowers. So before the film came out, they had around 10 valid leads per day from whistleblowers towards corruption in different institutions and in different, parts of society. And once the film came out, that daily number went up to 120. So it went up by 10 or more times per day, which means that it did something with people. People took a decision for themselves somehow.
Hmm. Well, Vlad, I'm just amazed about your film, and it's rare where we have such a powerful documentary that has such a strong message, but then I'm, from a film lover, uh, the artistry and the way you've put it together is unparalleled. So just to have,
Thanks a lot.
yeah, but to have both strains happening, at the same time. I've told you I've seen it a couple of times, and the first time was to get to the subject, but then I'm just, the way you've put it together, reminds me of all the President's Men, in other Ace in the Hole, other
It's
like
all,
other great films about the press and journalism, and it plays like a thriller. It's quite an achievement what you've done. I'm in awe. you know
Thank you yeah, thank you very much.
yeah.
I think that, I think that, um, I mean, I have a lot of respect for the characters, and their courage, and the level of professionalism with which they did their jobs, uh, and the resilience of the characters, of the parents and the victims. uh, I just felt the need to tell the story, and to do it as they do, on the highest professional level I can, and to really pass on to the viewer what I felt while while doing the film, while filming this story.
Yeah. Well, bless you, Alexander. And it was quite an honor, quite a treat for me to talk to you.
Thanks a lot.
You're fantastic. Congratulations, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. I really hope we get to meet once this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love to.
It
Thank
would
you.
be a pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.